Good morning. Today is September 28th. We are going to be reading the book of Matthew. We are almost done with the book of Matthew, so if you've been following along, that is awesome for you. You've almost finished a full book of the Bible, which you should be really proud of yourself, because sometimes reading the Bible can seem overwhelming or seem like, is this something I can do? Yes, it's something you can do, and you've almost done it. So we're going to start right at chapter 26, verse 1 in Matthew, and I am reading the New Living Translation if you're following along with me. This is the plot to kill Jesus. When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, "As you know, Passover begins in 2 days, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." At the same time, the leading priests and elders were meeting at the residence of Caiaphas. Sorry if I said that wrong. The high priest, plotting how to capture Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the Passover celebration, they agreed, or the people may riot. Meanwhile, Jesus was in Bethany at the home of Simon, a man who had previously had leprosy. While he was eating, a woman came in with a beautiful alabaster jar of expensive perfume and poured it over his head. The disciples were indignant when they saw this. "What a waste," they said. "It could have been sold for a high price and the money given to the poor." But Jesus, aware of this, replied, "Why criticize this woman for doing such a good thing to me? You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. She has poured this perfume on me to prepare my body for burial. I tell you the truth, wherever the good news is preached throughout the world, this woman's deed will be remembered and discussed." Judas agrees to betray Jesus. Then Judas Iscariot, I always say it wrong, I'm sorry. One of the 12 disciples went to the leading priests and asked, "How much will you pay me to betray Jesus to you?" And they gave him 30 pieces of silver. From that time on, Judas began looking for an opportunity to betray Jesus. On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to prepare the Passover meal for you?" "As you go into the city," he told them, "you will see a certain man. Tell him, the teacher says, 'My time has come and I will eat Passover meal with my disciples at your house.'" So the disciples did as Jesus told them and prepared the Passover meal there. When it was evening, Jesus sat down at the table with the 12. While they were eating, he said, "I tell you the truth, one of you will betray me." Greatly distressed, each one of them asked, "Am I the one, Lord?" He replied, "One of you who has just eaten from this bowl will betray me. For the Son of Man must die, as the scriptures declared long ago. But how terrible it will be for the one who betrays him. It would be far better for the man if he was never born." Judas, the one who would betray him, also asked, "Rabbi, am I the one?" And Jesus told him, "You have said it." As they were eating, Jesus took some bread and blessed it. Then he broke it in pieces and gave it to the disciples, saying, "Take this and eat it, for this is my body." And he took a cup of wine and gave thanks for it. He gave it to them and said, "Each of you drink from it, for this is my blood, which confirms the covenant between God and his people. It is poured out as a sacrifice to forgive the sins of many. Mark my words, I will not drink wine again until the day I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." Then they sang a hymn and went out to the Mount of Olives. On the way, Jesus told them, "Tonight all of you will desert me, for the scripture says, 'God will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered.' But after I have been raised from the dead, I will go ahead of you to Galilee and meet you there." Peter declared, "Even if everyone else deserts you, I will never desert you." Jesus replied, "I tell you the truth, Peter. This very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. That you will deny 3 times that you even know me." "No," Peter insisted. "Even if I have to die with you, I would never deny you." And all the other disciples vowed the same. Then Jesus went with them to the olive grove, called Gethsemane, and he said, "Sit here while I go over there to pray." He took Peter and Zebedee's 2 sons, James and John, and he became anguished and distressed. He told them, "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." He went on a little farther and bowed with his face to the ground, praying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Then he returned to the disciples and found them asleep. He said to Peter, "Couldn't you watch with me even 1 hour? Keep watch and pray, so that you will not give in to temptation. For the spirit is willing, but the body is weak." Then Jesus left them a second time and prayed, "My Father, if this cup cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done." When he returned to them again, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open. So he went to pray a 3rd time, saying the same thing. Then he came to the disciples and said, "Go ahead and sleep. Have your rest. But look, the time has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Up, let's be going. Look, my betrayer is here." And even as Jesus said this, Judas, one of the 12 disciples, arrived with a crowd of men armed with a sword and clubs. They had been sent by the leading priests and elders of the people. The traitor, Judas, had given them a prearranged signal. "You will know which one to arrest when I greet him with a kiss." So Judas came straight to Jesus. "Greetings, Rabbi," he exclaimed, and gave him a kiss. Jesus said, "My friend, go ahead and do what you have come for." Then the others grabbed Jesus and arrested him. But one of the men with Jesus pulled out his sword and struck the high priest's slave, slashing off his ear. "Put away your sword," Jesus told him. "Those who use the sword will die by the sword. Don't you realize that I could ask my Father for thousands of angels to protect us, and he would send them instantly? But if I did, how would the scriptures be fulfilled that describe what must happen now?" Then Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I some dangerous revolutionary that you come with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple? I was there teaching every day. But this is all happening to fulfill the word of the prophets as recorded in the scriptures." At that point, all disciples deserted him and fled. Then the people who had arrested Jesus led him to the home of Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of religious law and the elders had gathered. Meanwhile, Peter followed him at a distance and came to the high priest's courtyard. He went in and sat with the guards and waited to see how it would all end. Inside, the leading priest and the entire high council were trying to find witnesses who would lie about Jesus so they could put him to death. But even though they found many who agreed to give false witnesses, they could not use anyone's testimony. Finally, 2 men came forward who declared, "This man said, 'I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days.'" Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Well, aren't you going to answer these charges? What do you have to say for yourself?" But Jesus remained silent. Then the high priest said to him, "I demand in the name of the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Jesus replied, "You have said it, and in the future you will see the Son of Man seated in the place of power at God's right hand, and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothing to show his horror and said, "Blasphemy! Why do we need other witnesses? You have all heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?" "Guilty," they shouted. "He deserves to die." Then they began to spit in Jesus' face and beat him with their fists. And some slapped him, jeering, "Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who hit you that time?" Meanwhile, Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant girl came over and said to him, "You were one of those with Jesus, the Galilean." But Peter denied it in front of everyone. "I don't know what you're talking about." Later, out by the gate, another servant girl noticed him and said to them, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again, Peter denied it, this time with an oath. "I don't even know the man." A little later, some of the bystanders came over to Peter and said, "You must be one of them we can tell by your Galilean accent." Peter swore, "A curse of me if I am lying. I don't know the man." And immediately a rooster crowed. Suddenly, Jesus' words flashed through Peter's mind. "Before the rooster crows, you will deny 3 times that you even know me." And he went away, weeping bitterly. So that is the end of chapter 26. We're not doing 2 chapters today because I feel like that was a lot to digest, a lot to read. It's the story leading up to right before Jesus' crucifixion, so it's also really heavy. And I just have a note here. I want it to go back to the moment Judas agrees to betray Judas agrees to betray Jesus. So Judas likes money. A lot of people like and even love money, and money is a resource. But once you put it above a resource, it can create huge problems. And so he was willing to betray someone he loved dearly for 30 pieces of silver. He wanted to betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. So I have written here, what's your price? Like, what is it? Do you have a price that can be put on love? Like, why would 30 pieces of silver be enough for you when you have Jesus? You have God literally walking with you. You could have turned to God and said, "Hey, yo, can I get 30 pieces of silver?" Instead, he went behind Jesus's back and made a bargain for 30 pieces of silver, and then went up to Jesus like nothing happened, even though Jesus knew. He was sitting at the table later on after that bargain and eating like nothing happened. And Jesus said, "One of you who have just eaten from this bowl will betray me and has betrayed me." And then he had the audacity to say, "Was it me?" You know, God knows everything. And you're going to say, "Was it me, God?" Like, come on. And I just find it really funny that even so, he knows that God knows, that Jesus knows. He leaves that dinner and then comes back with a group of people who are armed behind him, and again has the audacity to hug Jesus and to give him a kiss, and to just seal that betrayal with a kiss. What is your price? Make sure you don't have a price, because it seems that Judas was blinded by money. He let something shiny be dazzled in front of his face, and then all his morals went to the wayside. He was greedy to begin with. He always liked money to begin with. That's part of the reason they were so angry when the perfume was poured out onto Jesus, because they're thinking about how much that perfume can be sold for. Yeah, they're thinking about how much that perfume can be sold for, and how much of a profit they can make, instead of thinking about the fact that this is a way to bless and to praise Jesus while he's still right here in front of you, because he's already told you that he's going to die. He's going to be murdered. And he said this more than once at this point. So when she takes out her perfume and she goes to bless him, they're all upset. And Judas is like, wow, like he really does not see the value of money. So I'm not going to hang out with him anymore. I'm going to go make my own money. And then he makes a bargain for 30 pieces of silver to betray Jesus. Don't let something be dazzled in front of your face and make a compromising decision over something that has no real value. At the end of the day, when you pass away, money is not going with you. He had Jesus with him and still chose to pick money and still chose to let something that had no real value compromise him. So just be careful, and just think about, do you have a price? And if so, what is your price? And if you find out that you do have a price, like if you won the lotto, would you still be the same person? I know that's not the greatest example, but it is a valid question. Like, if you got everything you wanted, are you going to turn your back on Jesus? Or are you going to still say, okay, God, whatever your will is? Just like Jesus. Jesus was God walking, so he could have anything he wanted immediately, instantly. He could have chosen not to die, not to show up. But instead, he was like, whatever your will is, God. Judas should have just been like, whatever your will is, God. Instead, he was like, I'm gonna go get this money. And that caused his death. That led up to the crucifixion of his Messiah. And that just led it to so much destruction. Now let's stop. And we're going to end it on that note. And I will check in tomorrow. We'll read tomorrow at 9 a.m. I hope you have a good day.